Hello and howdy everyone. A couple of days ago I saw one of my favorite films of all time, one of the great films of all time, that's Spirited Away. This is the third time I've seen Spirited Away on the big screen, but this is the first time that I saw it in its original Japanese with English subtitles. It was also a archival 35mm print. It was gorgeous. A fantastic time in the theater. I don't know what to say about it. It's a 10 for me. I mean, it's an 11. I think it's basically beyond reproach. It's stunningly beautiful. It's features effortless storytelling. It's, with argument, it's Hayao Miyazaki's masterpiece. And I would argue that, actually, but I think, most would probably argue that this is Spirited Away is probably his great work. I think Hayao Miyazaki is a genius. I think he's the greatest living filmmaker. I saw Spirited Away. It's in its original U.S. release. It came out in Japan in 2001, I believe, where it became the highest-grossing movie of all time. I think it's been beaten since then, but for a while, Spirited Away was the reigning box office champ in Japan. It didn't come out in America until 2003. I want to say maybe February of 2003. I'll always remember that because it was the last film I saw. I live in Los Angeles, and before I moved to Los Angeles, I lived in the St. Louis area of Missouri. So the last film I saw before moving to Los Angeles was Spirited Away. And then the first film I saw after moving to Los Angeles was Spirited Away. So I'll always remember that as my moving to Los Angeles movie. And I loved it. I can remember watching it the first time. There's some imagery from that film that is burned into my brain. Just can't get out of there. Whenever I think of Spirited Away, I just see it. It's basically, they use the shot a couple times, but when they're walking through the flowers, and it's just like walls of flowers, and everything's moving. I'll get to that in a second, but it's just burned into my psyche. It's just in there. I thought I was super pumped to see this because I knew that it was going to be a 35mm print. I knew that it was going to be subtitled with the original Japanese, which, I was kind of, hesitant about because I always, say that the subtitles, distract, and especially when you're watching something as rich and as gorgeously lush as a Miyazaki film. You want to stare at the art, and you don't want to, read the words. You don't want to take the time reading the words. I've seen Spirited Away many times. I think the other night was probably, I would put it, I haven't seen it more than 10, but I've definitely seen it more than 5 times. So I'll say that it was probably viewing 6, maybe 7. I know I've seen the movie more than 5 times, but not more than 10. So I know the story. I'm familiar with the story, so I just I would occasionally watch, the subtitles here and there, but I mostly wanted to, again, watch that gorgeous animation. and appreciate the vocal acting of the original Japanese actors. Now, Disney handles the Miyazaki releases here, and luckily they, as they should, handle it with great respect, and they do the best at their translation and their casting of the English voices. So I've never really minded the American versions of the Miyazaki films, because I think that, they realize that Miyazaki is like the god of animation, and they need to, honor that. But it was definitely interesting to, hear the Japanese voices come out, and then compare that to what I have in my mind and memory from the English translation. And the only differences I found in there, in that regard, were, maybe they're a little bit more rude, a little bit more violent. The language is more violent. There was a couple times like where Ubaba says something like, I'll kill you, or, I'll break your arms or legs, turn your bones to dust, something like that. They don't really get that intense with the American translation. I don't think I ever remembered her saying that she was going to kill her, or, turn her into dust or anything like that. I think that was like the only thing I noticed, is just that, they're just a little bit more harsh, and that doesn't come across in our translation. I don't really know what else to say. I think it's, kind of a perfect film. It's 2 hours and 5 minutes long. Just disappears. It's just over before you know it. It just flows so smoothly. Every single character you meet has something important to do, some meaningful part of the story. Everything means something. Nothing is frivolous. Always the thing about Miyazaki films that I see nowhere else, and I guess it's, done in the animation process, and I don't really know how else to describe it, and I think he uses it more here than in any of his other films, is that there are times where it seems that everything in the frame, everything is in motion. And it creates this vibratory sense that comes off the screen. And it makes this two-dimensional picture seem like, for me, beyond 3D. It feels like it's happening to me. I don't know. It's something I really can't describe. But it's just beautiful, and no one can do with that but Miyazaki. I don't think anyone even tries or has even figured out how to do it. But it's, there's just so much detail. The world is fully realized. You can just totally get immersed in that world because it's all just right there. There's just so much detail. And it all seems so real because of the storytelling. It's just really amazing. I even hate to talk about it, because to try and talk about it, makes it static. And I don't think that, something like that should be static. Miyazaki and static are opposites. I didn't even say what the movie's about. The movie is about, I think one reason I love Miyazaki so much is a central theme to a lot of his work is moving. The character is moving somewhere, is in transition. And as a kid, I moved a lot. In the first 8 years of my life, I think I had 3 homes. In the first, actually 4 homes in the first 8 years of my life. And I think that's a lot. I mean, I'm sure there's, a lot more, but basically every 2 years I moved. And characters in Miyazaki films are always moving to a new town, doing something where they're leaving their old life behind and starting something totally new. I've always deeply identified with that. So it's probably a bias that he's, my favorite filmmaker right now. So it's about a girl who's moving with her family to a new town. Along the way, they get a little off track trying to find their new home. They walk through a tunnel, and as soon as they walk through a tunnel, they're in the land of Oz. But it's the land of Miyazaki. And there you go. She's there in the mystical realm. Her parents quickly disappear, and she's left to struggle on her own. And she meets several interesting characters, remains pure of heart, and eventually, makes her way back home. I think it's just an unbelievable fairy tale, basically. It's a modern day fairy tale, and it's just gorgeous. To see it on the big screen again, this is the 3rd time on the big screen, it was just so beautiful. And I don't know what else to say. About halfway through, maybe not even halfway through, I found that I was just leaning forward, just like this. And that's what it is. It takes me back to when I was a small child, being read a story by a parent and having that story fill my imagination and take me there. And that is what Miyazaki can do. He's everyone's parent because he's the best storyteller there is. And he can make you feel, lost in this imaginary world. And, well, maybe not lost, but wrapped up, involved, there in this imaginary world, and it just makes you feel like a kid again. It just makes you feel, it makes you feel. I really don't know what else to say. I just think it's one of the great films of all time. I reached that decision by saying that, Hayao Miyazaki is, one of the greatest filmmakers. Even if, without bias, I think even if you just are a student of film, you have to kind of admit that even if he doesn't, even if you're not into animation or foreign films, you have to admit that Miyazaki is a giant. I think that, again, my opinion, he's the greatest living filmmaker, and I think that this is, with argument, his best film, his masterpiece. You could certainly argue, I would argue that. My personal favorite is the film I'll talk about after this, Porco Rosso. I think that, for me, I think that's where his masterpiece. I don't know what else to say. You need to see Spirited Away. If you've never seen Spirited Away, I mean, you're missing out. If you've never seen the works of Miyazaki, you're missing out. I think they're some of the best films of all time. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say. They're just works of art. Each film is a work of art, and it always leaves me with so much. And Spirited Away is just so rich and just love. It's just love. I don't know what else to say about it other than that it's just pure love and joy. And there you go. That's Spirited Away. And for me, it's an 11. So check it out. Thanks.